After flushing $1 billion down the drain, after getting trolled by fans and the whole internet for their exceptional movie making like this and this, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power is somehow back for another season. I am as surprised as you are. This series is like the 1% germ that never gets killed. Against all odds, you'd think the studio might have taken a step back, admitted a few mistakes, and reconsidered its approach. Instead, they've doubled down. But that's also where the first warning sign appears. Almost everything the trailer chooses to highlight is something audiences already recognize from Tolkien or Peter Jackson's films. The Balrog, the One Ring, Mount Doom, and the Ringwraiths. Rather than selling viewers on the strength of its original storytelling, Amazon seems to be relying on familiar imagery to rekindle interest. The showrunners have even suggested that newcomers can jump straight into Season 3 without needing to watch the earlier seasons. Think about that for a second. How often do you hear the creators of a television series encouraging audiences to skip the first 2 seasons? That's less of a selling point and more of an admission that something clearly didn't work before. Reports suggested that only around 37% of viewers who started the first season actually finished it. A significant portion of the audience simply stopped watching. I will be honest with you, Season 3 is not looking so good. There are so many issues, like Celeborn magically reappearing after missing for 2 seasons. Orcs are good guys now. The Nazgul appear way earlier than Tolkien's chronology. They are compressing thousands of years of major historical events into 1 or 2 years. Characters appear outside their original timelines, and so much more. But before we discuss all these issues in detail, let's recap the absolute dumpster fire that was Seasons 1 and 2. In Season 1, the biggest issue was Galadriel. In Tolkien's writings, Galadriel is one of the wisest and most respected figures in Middle-earth, defined by patience, restraint, and immense inner strength. This version of Galadriel often came across as reckless, argumentative, and surprisingly unlikable. Many viewers struggled to connect with her journey, particularly as the series built an increasingly controversial dynamic between her and Sauron that many felt bordered on romantic tension while her husband was still alive somewhere, only to somehow magically return in Season 3. Whether intentional or not, it became one of the most discussed and criticized aspects of the show. And Galadriel wasn't the only source of frustration. Out of nowhere, Sauron was portrayed almost like a good guy in the first season. Another common criticism centered on mystery box storytelling. Rather than allowing characters and relationships to drive the narrative, the series repeatedly relied on hidden identities and unanswered questions. Who is the stranger? Is Halbrand really who he claims to be? Who is Sauron? This is definitely not Gandalf. While mystery can create suspense, many viewers felt these questions were stretched across entire seasons without providing satisfying emotional payoffs, making the show feel more interested in surprising audiences than telling a compelling story. The forging of the Rings of Power became another major point of criticism. In Tolkien's writings, Sauron spends decades carefully manipulating Celebrimbor while disguised as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. The series removes Anatar entirely for much of the story and condenses the deception into a far shorter period. Many viewers felt that one of the most important events in Middle-earth's history unfolded with surprising speed, reducing centuries of calculated manipulation into what appeared to be a rushed plot twist. Finally, perhaps the harshest criticism was that the enormous budget simply wasn't reflected in the quality of the storytelling. With hundreds of millions of pounds spent on production, audiences expected a defining television masterpiece. Instead, many felt they had watched a visually magnificent series that lacked narrative focus, emotional resonance, and the mythic grandeur that made Tolkien's work endure for generations. The greatest disappointment wasn't that the Rings of Power was different, it was that, for many viewers, it never came close to reaching the standards set by the world it was adapting. Which brings us back to Season 3. If you've spent any time reading the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, or the appendices of The Lord of the Rings, you'll know that the Second Age unfolds over thousands of years. The forging of the rings, Sauron's rise, the corruption of Númenor, the appearance of the Nazgul, and the Last Alliance are separated by centuries. Amazon has chosen to compress much of that history into what appears to be only a few years. Middle-earth begins to feel surprisingly small, with every major character seemingly present for every major event. The destination may remain recognizable, but the journey loses much of the depth that made Tolkien's history so compelling in the first place. Another curious development is the return of Celeborn, Galadriel's husband. Longtime Tolkien fans spent 2 seasons asking a simple question: where was he? He's hardly a minor character in Tolkien's writings, yet he was conspicuously absent while the series explored Galadriel's relationship with Halbrand, who was eventually revealed to be Sauron. Now that Celeborn appears to be returning, it risks creating an awkward situation. Instead of feeling like a natural continuation of Tolkien's story, his arrival may remind audiences of how strange his earlier absence really was. It's difficult not to wonder whether this is a carefully planned storyline or simply an attempt to respond to years of criticism. Amazon also appears to be relying heavily on celebrity casting to generate excitement. Some of the cast announcements have felt strangely awkward, with actors appearing more like people fulfilling contractual publicity obligations than performers genuinely excited to be joining one of the biggest fantasy franchises ever created. The marketing surrounding Simon Pegg's role as the Balrog has become a perfect example. Look at him promoting this series.
Well, the announcement's been made in Hall H at San Diego Comic-Con. I can now reveal that I am the Balrog.
He looks like a guy who's being paid well just to phone in the performance. Look at this video. It's super awkward.
I will be voicing the Balrog in Rings of Power. I have already voiced the Balrog in the Rings of Power.
He keeps looking at the teleprompter just to remember the character he's playing. Perhaps the most baffling creative decision is the continued effort to humanize the orcs. In Tolkien's Legendarium, orcs represent corruption, cruelty, and the destructive influence of evil. They are not misunderstood heroes waiting for emotional redemption, yet the series continues to present them with sympathetic motivations, families, personal relationships, and now, apparently, even heroic qualities. Complexity isn't automatically a bad thing, but at some point you have to ask whether you're still adapting Tolkien or simply borrowing his names while telling an entirely different story. If orcs become just another morally conflicted fantasy race, much of what made them terrifying in the first place disappears. Then there are the continuing lore changes. The Nazgul appear far earlier than expected. The timeline remains heavily compressed. The Balrog appears to play a much larger role than Tolkien ever intended during this period. Familiar characters continue appearing decades, or even centuries, away from their original place in the chronology. No adaptation can perfectly follow every page of its source material, but Season 3 seems determined to treat Tolkien's timeline as little more than a loose suggestion. Rather than adapting the Second Age, it often feels like the series is assembling a greatest hits collection of Middle-earth moments, regardless of when they were actually supposed to happen. Perhaps that's the greatest irony surrounding the Rings of Power. This is a series with virtually unlimited financial resources. It has some of the finest visual artists in the television industry, breathtaking filming locations, magnificent costumes, and world-class special effects. Yet despite all of that, the conversation surrounding Season 3 isn't about excitement. It's about whether Amazon can finally recover from the mistakes of its first 2 seasons. That's an extraordinary position for the most expensive television series ever made to find itself in. At this point, Season 3 doesn't simply have to be good. It has to justify its own existence. It has to convince audiences that 3 seasons, years of production, and an unprecedented budget were all leading somewhere worthwhile. Because if this season once again prioritizes spectacle over storytelling, nostalgia over meaningful character development, and marketing over substance, then the Rings of Power may ultimately be remembered not as the next great fantasy epic, but as one of the most expensive missed opportunities in television history.